So let us discuss about 22nd October 2015 newspaper. The first article is related to the climate change and consumption patterns across the people. Now across the INDCs, that is intended nationally determined contributions, one factor that is missing, that is what is related to the consumption. Now, for example, I have a car. If I brought this car in India and using this car in India, the production involved in the car and also consumption of the gases in running the car, both of them are contributing the carbon emissions into this country. Now the same car is imported from China and I'm using that in India. The consumption, especially the use of the car in India, those emissions will be added into the India's counter. But the car which is, the emissions which have come in production of the car, they will be added into the China's account. So, in the globalized interconnected world, the goods are produced at one place and consumed at the other place. In this context, the non-counting of consumption is making this entire counting of the carbon emissions, per capita emissions, etc. something absurd and lopsided. Now, in this context, this arrangement has to be changed. If you go by this arrangement, in the West, a single per capita emissions of an individual will be much higher than what is being said now. Now, in India case, the dangerous trend is coming up. That is, India is also more and more shifting towards the consumptive pattern of economy. Then how to tackle this is a major challenge. Because around 5% of the total Indian population, they are almost living with the standards equivalent to the European community. Now, the second thing is, many people cite efficiency is an effective tool to fight to decrease the carbon emissions. Yes, it is true. But however, emission also leads to excessive consumption, that is to the rebound effect. Now, for example, efficient fuel-used cars have been brought in. I try to use the car for more and more travel. In that case, the efficiency is balanced with the excessive consumption of a resource. So, the sustainable livelihood, especially with minimal consumption patterns, and consuming a good where it is produced to decrease the emissions that are coming from the transport, that is intercontinental transport, etc., that makes a huge contribution towards the climate change. In this context, how we see the economics itself has to change. So the levels of consumption and the levels of growth, these became synonymous with economic development. So this pattern also has to be changed to make the people to contribute and consider their consumption patterns to decrease the carbon emissions. And next is an article about the judicial reform. What the author suggests is the citizens are expecting an expeditious judgments or the delivery of the judiciary. Now in this case, he has recommended for two reforms. The one is institutional, the other one is related to the judicial cases. With regard to these reforms we have to see. Now huge pending cases are increasing. One of the reasons is lack of sufficient number of judges. Many of the high courts are running with half and to one-third of the capacity as of now. Even it is the case with Supreme Court. And second is the high court judges in their aspiration towards becoming the Supreme Court judge, they never try to question a Supreme Court judge, or they try to keep themselves in the goodwill of the Supreme Court judge. In this context, the author suggests that 70 years shall be made as a retirement age common for both Supreme Court and High Court judges. And next is the infrastructure in the courts have to be developed, and added to that, the vacancies shall be filled up, and finally, we shall be doing away with the pending cases through appointment of additional and ad hoc judges, which the Supreme Court is very much not interested in. Now, in the case of institutional reforms, how to bring in accountability? The first thing is, NJAC was scrapped by or declared as unconstitutional and void by the Supreme Court. What the author recommends is, a collegium has to be created at the high court level, in between a permanent commission, over that a Supreme Court collegium. High Court collegium, the aspirants are the people who are expecting to be the High Court judges. They will apply. So they will select some 1:2 ratio, etc. Some 10 are there. They might be selecting some 20 to 30 people. Out of that, certain people will be screened by permanent commission. Finally, it is the Supreme Court collegium that can make a decision. Similarly, for the appointment of Supreme Court judges also, the Supreme Court collegium and a permanent commission for this will be appointed. So this permanent commission also have a responsibility with regard to taking the actions on the judges who do not have integrity. So this kind of system can reform the existing the judicial appointment systems and also retains the primacy to the judges. That's what he tries to explain. And next is a shared responsibility. Now if you talk about the union finance ministers, that is the tyranny of unelected, that's what he tried to explain, the scrapping of NJAC by the Supreme Court. Understand what the citizen need is better services and better delivery of the judgments and least litigation possible. So in these circumstances, executive and judiciary shall work hand in hand. So it's a common endeavor. So how to go forward? So already Supreme Court Chief Justice Mr. Dattu has clarified that whenever the will of the people represented by Parliament comes in conflict with the will of the Constitution interpreted by judiciary, then the primacy exists for the will of the Constitution expressed by judiciary. So in this case, the Supreme Court also agreed that NJAC and judicial primacy with regard to the appointments, they do not go along with each other, and they recommended for reform of the collegium system to the better to bring in transparency in the appointment process. In this context, the legislature can take up a law as per the guidelines of the Supreme Court to appoint the judges by retaining the judicial primacy in the appointment of the judges. And next is a beautiful article. Here the Pakistan's policy is this. Full-scale deterrence it was talking about. It includes tactical and strategic deterrence. Now strategic deterrence means when they hit Mumbai or Delhi in India, that is strategic deterrence. On the other hand, if they use the nukes in the battlefield, that is tactical deterrence. Now India, according to Pakistan, it wanted to regain its strength in the conventional warfare. So it is starting something called as cold start doctrine. Though India has refused that there is no such a doctrine, the cold start doctrine, what it says is India will take a swift action and it will occupy the various cities in Pakistan before the Pakistan army can retaliate. That's what is called as a cold start doctrine. So it is also described as India's blitzkrieg, as like Hitler, what he did with the East Europe at that point of time. So, to stop this cold start doctrine, they are talking about tactical weapons. Now, United States of America and Pakistan, they are trying to bring in a civilian nuclear deal as per the Washington Post. What is this civil nuclear deal? So, as like in India, the US will try to provide for the civil nuclear cooperation agreement, which will bring in onto the forefront of the nuclear trade. But dubious distinction of Pakistan with regard to its nuclear program is a major hurdle over here. Now what the author suggests is this kind of mid-adventure or misadventure was also taken up by Ronald Reagan when he was the president. So it has strengthened the clandestine activities of the Pakistan rather than restraining itself. What the international theorists argue is this: a lack of any regulation on the Pakistani weapons is worse when compared to having some kind of regulation from the international community on the Pakistani armory. And also it believes that the situation can be used to make the Pakistan to sign CTBT irrespective of India signing it. And also it can be used to make Pakistan to tie up to the to up with the fissile material cut-off treaty. So to bargain with the Pakistan not to produce these tactical weapons, confine itself to the recessed strategic deterrence. What is meant by this recessed deterrence? The nuclear weapons will not be active, they have to be assembled before. It means that almost they will be in non-use state in the peace times. Only in the other times when the war situation they can be assembled and used. So America wants to confine them to the tactical weapons. So that is the reason why it wants to use this as a bargaining tool, that is civil nuclear cooperation agreement. So these are the situations. Now in this context, the changing equations in Afghanistan, they are deepening the United States and Pakistan relationship. And it appears that Pakistan is becoming more and more central to the Afghanistan strategy, especially initiating the peace dialogue between between the Taliban and Afghan government. And the second thing is Pakistan and its cooperation is very much necessary for United States to have a peaceful exit from Afghanistan. So in this context, Taliban taking back this Kunduz in Afghanistan, it says the situation is not very much ripe for the American troops to withdraw from Afghanistan. So in those circumstances, the facing of the harsh times, etc., is not in the national interest of the America. So in this context, what it has been said is this. America is trying to bring in civil nuclear cooperation agreement also to protect its interests in this particular region, especially with relation to the Central Asia. So author warns that during the Reagan era, whatever the adventurism the United States has took and believed in Pakistan and its nuclear assets, the same mistake that Obama is trying to repeat. So India has vehemently opposed because the nuclear waiver to India has come through a very tough challenge. But Pakistan getting hyphenated with India, it is getting as an easier challenge. Added to that, the China is supplying the huge number of nuclear reactors to Pakistan. And its almost energy needs are surplus. Then based on the track record of the Pakistan, what it is going to do with these nuclear reactors is a bigger question. And next is, the entry of the Russian forces into Syria has changed the fight in favor of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Now in this context, Assad was trying to thank Mr. Putin for his effort. And there is a beautiful statement. Every military action must be followed by political steps. So it means that once this military action is over, all the groups shall be put for discussion and a final solution has to be achieved. And next is Defense Minister's visit to Russia. If you see the yesterday's article, I said to you that Afghanistan policy of India has to be revisited because in the occupation of recent Kunduz, most of the Taliban people, they are not only from Pakistan and Afghanistan, they are also from Tajikistan and all the neighboring states of this Russia. So it means in the long run, the Pakistan interests also may threaten Russia's unity and also integrity. So in this context, Russia is trying to bring in new forces deployed at the Tajikistan border. So what it says is this, what it shows is this, whatever the romance going between Pakistan and Russia is going to be short-lived once the Russia deploys its forces across the Tajikistan borders. And then another thing is, other irritants are the Admiral Gorbachev, Admiral Gorshkov, its cost has remarkably increased. and the spare parts are not available for the defense establishments which India had brought from Russia. These are the other challenges we need to face. And a new pipeline is coming in the east, connecting the Eastern Europe. So in this case, this pipeline from Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, it's going to connect it with the Eastern Europe. So it can be used to export the gas to Ukraine, and also it can be used to access and storage the largest Latvia's gas reservoir. So other than that, it is not of much significance. So try to watch these videos. Thank you very much.